Testing. All right, hello. Thank you. Somebody's hanging in there with me. What happens if one device, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different electronic devices. If one of them freezes up, it starts a cascading domino effect, and all these devices need to be brought back online in the proper order, or nothing works. So, thank you. Let's get official and legal. Where's my clapper? I'm assuming that's what this thing is called. I don't really know. Dan's Art Adventure number 23. Whoo, rip roaring, up to number 23 now. For you old timers, for you newcomers, that's a joke. We actually got up to number 1,000 on my daily art adventure. Anyway, much slower now. Rescuing another festival painting. This is, by the way, take 2, just in case you ever wondered. Do we ever go into take 2? The answer is yes, see, when that happens. All right, thank you for joining me. So, just a few minutes on this painting. This is the one that some of you may have watched me the other day, day before yesterday. This painting was horrible, and I'm very happy to say it is, 100 times, using the colloquial expression, of course. It's 100 times better than it was 2 days ago. I've repainted nearly the entire surface, but I didn't have to redraw anything. The drawing was okay, pretty much. And of course, the most important aspect of any painting is play of light. So that's the main thing that I've introduced to the canvas, is much more dramatic lighting. That almost goes without saying. And I really thought that I was all done. Just as I've stared at it here in my studio over the last couple of days, I've realized, oh, you know what, just a couple things. One is, I had light in several of these windows in its earlier iteration stage, and I decided that, yeah, that was a good idea. So I'm coming back and doing light in the windows. One of the things that I added to the painting, completely added, was these little people, these figures all across the bottom of the painting. And I believe that has improved the painting considerably. And again, staring at it for a couple days, I decided that these figures could stand to have a little bit more light on them. That's partly the caprice, the unfortunate effect of acrylic paints drying darker than you put them on. So right now I have a very pale ultramarine blue on my brush, just hitting a little bit more. I kind of like the way I paint figures in a crowd. Quite abstract, as you can see. Little multicolored smudges, and also pencil in those. I don't know if you can see that or not. So we're just adding a little bit more color to them. Let's mix up some light red orange right now. And then I'll be on to the next painting, which I think I showed you briefly the other day. I don't remember. I did 3 paintings at this festival. This festival was way back in November. I'm quite embarrassed about how long it's taking me to get this delivered. They haven't complained. I'm surprised. Anyway, we're old friends, me and this Whirligig Festival. So there, I'm calling that done. I've already painted all the edges. The last thing I'm going to do on this, oh wait, no, hang on. I'm not done yet. But the last thing I'm going to do is varnish with acrylic varnish. So in that case, the word varnish is in quotation marks. Do you understand? If you're using a, like, Liquitex gloss medium, and varnish is one product. If it's an acrylic water-based product, it's, in my opinion, it's not a real varnish, but we treat it like a varnish, and it's certainly adequate for an acrylic painting, to, at least in my ignorant opinion. But I started to say I'm all done, and then I realized, oh wait, no, I'm not either. I was going to do more color highlights and broken color. And while I'm at it, let me zoom in here real tight. A few minutes ago I was doing red. I did this and this over here. This red here is all a result, byproduct of the red watercolor pencil. Now, red at the moment, I'm doing green, so ignore that. I'm talking about the red. Okay, this red in here was, and you can see a little bit of it everywhere. 2 days ago, when I undertook to repair this horrible painting, the first thing I did is I did some real sloppy, loose drawing with watercolor pencils. Okay, and mostly entirely purple, red, and blue watercolor pencils. And I said at the time, the more ugly your subject matter is, and it doesn't feel so ugly now, thank goodness, but the more ugly your subject matter is, as a general rule of thumb, then the more you should abstract that image. So I was in the mood to introduce unrealistic elements to the painting, and the first thing I did was red pencil, watercolor pencil. So when I put water on top of it, they bled like watercolor pencils do. And I'm mentioning them, dwelling on it so much, because I want to mention, in a sense, this has the same effect as a toned canvas. And the most traditional of toned canvases, you may know, is red, any one of a number of red colors, all right? And one of the things I teach all the time, and if you do a toned canvas, no matter what color it's toned, orange, red, brown, blue, whatever it is, first of all, number one, try to allow as much of that underpainting show through the finished painting as possible. Are you listening to me? And not everybody does this. I mean, I love doing it under a toned canvas painting once in a while, but it's not my normal. But many of you, I'm assuming most of you know what that means. And again, the most traditional is when you do a red canvas and then do a scene like a landscape on top of it or something. Are you with me? So when you do that, number one, try to leave as much of that red show through as you can possibly stand. So 95% of student paintings, when students, early journey painters, when they do a toned canvas, they cover it all up, or they cover up too much. Okay, so rule number one, don't you just love listening to me? Rules. They're not really rules, guidelines, rules that can be broken, of course. Okay, so number one, work to try to retain more and more and more. Let those colors show through. Okay, that's important tip number one, especially for those of you who are perhaps early journey painters. When you do a toned canvas, number one, preserve bits and pieces of that. Okay, that's number one. Number two, and this is what I'm modeling for you right here, the red in the cracks is like like a toned canvas. Number two, then, after the painting is all finished, so to speak, you come back and add, in this case, red. Let me go back and let me do a little bit more of that. So let's pretend that I did this painting with a red toned canvas. And it's not hard to pretend because I have essentially the same effect here. Okay, so what I'm saying then is I now have red paint on my brush, and there's a real skinny bit of that red colored pencil showing right up here. This is one of the tricks. After the painting is, so to speak, all finished, everything else is done, you come back and reintroduce with an opaque, this doesn't apply to watercolors at all, you understand that. You reintroduce that underpainting color to your quote-unquote finished painting. Why? Because now you have this red color as the last layer on top and also as the first layer underneath. And they vibrate against each other. They play with each other. They reinforce, they support each other. And another way to put that is your eye, your mind, is mildly confused, which generally speaking, human beings, they say, don't enjoy being confused. Generally speaking, that's what you would say. I don't like being confused. Well, when it comes to visual art, in fact, as a matter of fact, you do enjoy being confused. And it creates, it releases a little drop of joy juice in your brain. My way of describing aesthetic pleasure. Little drop, bzing of joy juice gets released in your brain when you do things that your eye enjoys. And a lot of that is related to a momentary flicker of confusion. Wait, I don't get it. Is that red underneath or on top? And then as your brain either sorts it out or doesn't even bother sorting it out, but it's experienced, that little bit of confusion is felt by your mind as pleasure and aesthetic pleasure. Okay, so that's all. So right now I've gotten away from red. I've got a medium light purple on my brush, and I'm just doing a little bit of broken color because I had intended to do that and only did a little bit 2 days ago. So I'm doing a little bit more right now, and the painting is coming a little bit more to life with these bits of broken color. Broken color means same value, different color. Same lightness, darkness, that's what value means, lightness, darkness, but a very different color. All right, I'm going to do just a little bit more, mixing up now a dark maroon burgundy, because I know a trick related to broken color in particular. That trick is that foliage, trees, grass, bushes, things that are dark green or green, really look good with a little bit of burgundy, maroon, whichever you want to call it, mixed in. I'm not really using the right brush. So let me clean this real quickly. I'm assuming you can tell, I'm working all of this in acrylics, of course. This painting will be an acrylic painting, not oil like my normal. And now that I've done a little bit of burgundy here and there, I'm mixing up another batch of dull phthalo, dirty phthalo blue to play with the burgundy. And you go on and on and on forever. So I'm sort of doing a broken color of my broken color. The burgundy by itself looked a little too contrived, but now it looks good. All right, I think I'm going to call that done. I'm really anxious to get on to my next painting. Hello, John Melanzi Art. Good to see you. Thank you for joining me. And hello, Tiago. You talking about here? You're no doubt correct. But I'm going to call that done. All right, now let's go to my other problem. One festival, two bad paintings out of one festival. This one wasn't quite as bad as that one. That one I was just working on was, if you saw it 2 days ago, it was terrible. This one is also problematic. So often when I do a festival, the festival organizers They pay me, of course, and they have hired, not hired, they've gotten support from businesses in the city to pay for me to come. The deal is, if they pay $1,000 or something like that, then they get to have one of the paintings. So in this case, it's this Casita Brewing Company that was right next to where I was set up, wanted me to paint their building, and they said with focus on what they called a beer garden. Okay, now the beer garden was just a flat lawn with not much grass, with a fence around it and a gate here, one street light that I moved a little bit to bring it, and the original painting here actually extended another foot or foot and a half, and I decided it was better cropped. So this is a very challenging scene. This is for a client. It's for this company, so they know what their building looks like. They know what their quote-unquote beer garden looks like, and it's challenging because it's just not a very winsome scene. It would be delightful if there's a big tree right here. That would rescue it. If there's a tree coming over the top of this building or up here, that would be immensely helpful. But there are no trees. Now I've already touched this up a little bit day before yesterday. I'll tell you what I did. I intensified the color of these two umbrellas and enlarged this one considerably. I've added several figures, 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know which ones, 5, 6, something like that. I did a little more texture up here, but that's all. I'm still in need of something else. You with me? But I'm going to start with the easy, low-hanging fruit, which is I'm going to work on this red umbrella first and do the light side. Is very flat right now. That's not at all acceptable. So let's do the light coming from the left, as you can see here. So let's do light on this umbrella. I wonder what would happen if no, not much. So I was wondering what would happen if I smeared that. The answer was, not much. The canvas I'm working on here is so rough that it doesn't, the paint really sticks in the cracks quite a bit, and so I can't rub it a lot. All right, but that's good enough. That's good enough. Now let's do a little bit of the same thing to the purple umbrella, going around the side and doing again the light part. While I'm at it, let's do the dark side of the purple umbrella. I'm not cleaning my brushes, so I've got a horribly dirty purple. It's not really horrible, but if you want to think it's purple, it's pretty horrible. Let's do the same thing over here in the red, a little bit more. You can see that the main thing I tried to do with this challenging scene is manufacture light. The sun was coming from the south. We're looking north east, so the sun in the winter was to my right. So I just intensified the light hitting here, and especially these two figures here, and of course playing with the shadows on the sidewalk. All those are attempts on my part to take a very challenging subject matter and make it somewhat interesting. Now I think, and I took this painting, by the way, with me to my Painters Forum group last night, and invited their input. There's a number of very good artists in that group, and I was saying, what would you do? What ideas do you have? And they gave me a few ideas, some of which, this was Tuesday night, not last night, Tuesday night, I'm sorry. Anyway, so they gave me a few ideas. Not a lot, but a little bit. Okay, so here's one of the things I... All right, so...
Picture. I'm so scared of hurting it.
Well, hello. So what I'm doing is manufacturing a more dramatic shadow. It was already more dramatic than real before I did this, but I'm exaggerating it even more. And again, this is not realistic. I think my client won't complain. I don't think they will say, "Wait, there's no tree over there. Where's that shadow coming?" You know, I think that they won't say that. Now, they could. They say, "We don't like that painting. He made a big shadow on the side of our building that isn't there." Okay, so I'm counting on the owners of this property to be more or less typical people that don't notice such things. They don't even notice, let alone whatever. And conversely, of course, anytime you darken your canvas, any part of your canvas, you're painting, you're not finished, right? You follow up dark with light. Dark's first, light's last. Or dark's first, light's second is another way to say the same thing. So I've mixed up here kind of a watery yellow orange, again kind of a dirty yellow orange, so not real clean, which is fine. That's what I want. I don't want a Halloween pumpkin orange color or whatever. I don't know if that's the right analogy or not, but so I'm imagining that there's a great big tree just outside the view here to the right, which there is not. Now there is a tree way down at the end of the building, but it's not nearly big enough, and it's in the wrong place to cast this kind of shadow. So once again, I'm hoping that my client will not say that they'll like the painting and that they'll say, "Ooh, it's beautiful," and not say, "Ooh, wait a minute, there's no tree over there." Are you with me? And I think it's likely, if I can make the painting beautiful, which is the big if at the moment, if I can make the painting beautiful, their eye will buy it, so to speak. They won't complain, probably. I'm trying to be a little bit subtle. Maybe. Let me add a little bit of red to that. And come in here. I'm painting, as you can see, perhaps with fairly large chip brushes. Cheap chip brushes, because specifically and intentionally, because they're messy and they don't behave and they make their own marks. They make interesting marks. They are not like this would not work nearly so well with a nice clean crisp brush like that. It'd be horrible. Okay. So I'm intentionally using tools that keep me abstract, that make interesting marks. and I am, as you can see, practicing what I think is a good practice that is very often after you apply some paint, some color with brushes, you follow that up by messing up, so to speak. Messing up those marks, those nice, neat, it's kind of funny, I'm calling these nice, neat brush marks, even though they're applied with these messy chip brushes. Okay, I've just put some more white on my messy. Here's my palette, by the way, this Masterson Stay Wet palette. Acrylics are messy. Well, no, yeah, never mind. When you paint big and fast like this, my acrylics are messy. Okay, so I am exaggerating the light effects, basically taking what I already had going in the painting with this manufactured shadow and just exaggerating it a little bit. I don't know if I dare make that white, this part down here, any whiter. No, but I do want to clean it up a little bit. In fact, I'm going to clean it up with a accurate brush just for a minute. It has an uncomfortable slight curve to it, I think. So let's see if I can straighten that out. Which gives me a chance to repeat something I mentioned the other day. Again, for you early journey painters, anytime I'm painting a straight line here, right? A straight, fairly thin, narrow, skinny line. Do not reach, say, for your skinny brush, do not draw it this way. Most of the time, do not. And if you're a beginner, that may be your impulse, because doggone it, that's the way you did it in third grade. I pick on third graders a lot. Because third grade is the age at which most people stop their art career. And there's a reason for that. The reason all children draw, Picasso is famous for saying all children are artists. And it's not simply because society beats it out of them. That is partly true, but that's not the only reason. The other reason children stop drawing is because at about age, at least in the West, in America and in the West, at about age 8, their verbal skills finally catch up and eclipse their artistic skills. So when they were 1 or 2 through age 8, they could communicate, express themselves better through art than they could. Yeah, they couldn't read, they couldn't write, and so on and so forth. But starting about age 8, they're, as I said, their verbal skills eclipse their artistic skills. So most children put down the paintbrushes at about age 8, and that's very significant. That means most of the adults that you pass on the street, so to speak, their art, their understanding of art, their practice, their skill level of art, and including the way they relate to art, unless they've taken steps, what they think art is, what they think drawing is, how they think artists think, and so on and so forth. What's the word I'm looking for? Halted, anyway. That's not the word, but it'll come to me. They stopped their art journey basically at 8 years old. And that's why they still do stick figures and so on, because that's as far as they got. And they hung it up. Hung up their spurs, hung up their paintbrushes. Ooh, I might like that drip. Why did I get into that? Why did I start talking about it? I forget. We'll just let it go for the moment. rinse up these brushes, by the way. Do not, do not, do not, do not leave your brushes sitting in water even for 5 minutes. It is absolute death to the brush. Acrylics are terrible on brushes. Contrary to what you beginners thought, you thought the oils were easy cleanup. Again, that's only because water comes out of your tap. That's the reason you think that. Actually, acrylics are killer on everything. Tools, brushes, clothing, you know. Most of the paint that's spattered on the wall behind me and on my tuxes that I wear at a wedding and so on and so forth, that's all acrylics. All right, enough of that. Now I've got pencils, very unconventional. If you're new following me, please understand that the use of pencils in oil painting, or in this case acrylic painting, is very unconventional. Don't go to school if you're and say, teacher, we're supposed to use pencils in our painting. He or she will look at you like you got 3 heads. No, this is very unconventional. I just happen to like it, and I do like it, so that's why I'm doing it. So I'm adding, again, I want the energy of this part of the painting to be increased a little bit. And one of the ways to increase energy, of course, is to increase detail or texture, which is what I'm doing right now, even if it's not realistic texture. This is an old brick wall, and so almost anything I put on there by way of texture will be acceptable to the client, because it's just old, built up, torn down, built up, buildings removed, buildings come back, and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like a flat, straight brick wall. It's a brick wall that's been built, unbuilt, and so on and so forth, several times. I'm trying to mix up a light colored brown at the moment. Whoops, that's too light. I'm gonna leave it though. So I'm doing just a little bit of, again, abstract texture on the shady side of the building. Let's do a little palette knife on these mullions here. Mullions is a name for the boards, the sticks, the lines in the middle of a window, right? These are mullions. That's what that's called. So that's what I'm calling them. Yeah, a little bit more energy. Let's take some of that over to this side as well. I'm going to move you guys. I know I keep standing right in front of you. If you happen to be new to my channel and watching this, you might maybe find it interesting to know that this is me at pretty close to my loose end of the spectrum. I just finished a painting a few minutes ago. I thought I was done. In fact, and I showed this I think a couple days ago. I'll show you this real quick. Just this is one of my wedding paintings. Bear with me just a second. So this is Jack and Kate down in Jupiter, Florida a couple weeks ago. And I thought that I was all finished with this painting. I was actually emailing. I scanned this on my scanner upstairs on my computer and was emailing it to my client for them to approve. And all of a sudden I looked at her and said, oh no. Long story, I won't tell you how I fixed it, but I did some very, very, very fussy. So an hour ago here in my studio, I was with magnifying glass and tiny brushes going in here and making tiny, tiny, tiny corrections Let me get you, see if I can get you in closer here just for a minute so you can see what I'm talking about. So that's Jack, I'm sorry, Jack and Kate. There we go, there we go, there we go. All right, so I also do very realistic painting. I like to say I don't do impressionistic. That's not what I call my technique, but that's almost the category. I don't do impressionistic painting because I lack the ability to do realism. And that is, by the way, what I recommend for any of you who are anywhere close to the early stages of your art journey. Don't use impressionistic style as a cop-out for not learning how to draw. Okay, now if you're over 45, then you just do whatever. You're just painting for fun, probably. You just do whatever you want to do, okay? But if you're younger, evidently at the moment that means under 45. If you're younger, then work hard, learn how to draw. That's my sermonette for the day, okay? If you learn how to draw well, to render, to capture, to do realism, then you can back off and do believable or good impressionistic, or what I call abstract realism painting. And it's just so like you just have to do your homework. Everybody has to do their homework. All right, I'm mixing up a lighter brown. Oh, it's not light enough. But I can surely use this color somewhere. Surely. Once again, my overall objective in trying to rescue this painting is I want to bring even more energy to this part of the painting. Okay, so with this, I'm adding a little bit of texture with a slightly lighter brown color on my brushes, lighter than what's there. And the challenge, as you've heard me say several times with acrylics, is everything I'm putting on right now is going to dry darker than it appears right now. So that really does present a challenge very often. But I hope it's right, because what I just put on, in my opinion, is a little bit too light. It's a little bit lighter than I want it to be. So I'm hoping as it dries, it'll back down to exactly what I want it to be. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Hee-haw. Yahoo. All right. Adding a whole bunch more white. Thinking I can introduce some, again, a little bit more energy. Energy is one of my favorite words, especially in the latter stages of refining and finishing a painting. The question in my mind, the language that I'm using is, does this and that area of the painting need a little more energy or a little less, right? So by adding these daubs of color, I'm increasing the energy a little bit more. So what creates energy? Intense color and contrast and sharper edges, okay? Now I'm just mixing up a whole bunch of stuff that's on my palette. I've got now a very bluish brown. I do this not infrequently, by the way. I don't think I'm unique in this regard, but I guess I should mention it. I will often, in all of my paintings, I will often mix up a color on my palette having no idea where I'm going to put it. So this is looking very gray when I put it on the painting, and that's of course fine with me. Now, one of the dangers of painting in this manner, that is mixing up a color. Oh, by the way, did you notice I have to redo my signature here because it got cropped off. So I don't have to do that on camera. I will cover that up with dark paint and then move my signature up, probably in the lower left here somewhere. So the danger, if you will, of mixing up a color and then putting it sort of willy-nilly anywhere you feel like putting it, is that you can end up with too much of that color. It'll look like brewing company. I have to delete. I want this lettering right here to be barely legible. Okay, in my world, a sign this size should be very barely legible. That's another story for another time. Okay, so the danger of mixing up a color and putting it anywhere is that subconsciously the viewers will discern that was done. They'll experience, they won't be able to identify it, of course, but they will intuitively see, like in this case, this particular gray color that's here, like you just saw me do. All right, so that's the downside. But you regulars know the antidote, the solution. The fix for that is very simple. And it's usually easiest to do it immediately afterwards so you don't forget. The solution is mix up a batch of slightly lighter version of what I just did. And come back here, and on top of that, the color I just put down, do little dabs of this lighter color over part of the previous darker color. Does that make sense? And then it very much fixes that problem that I just described a minute ago, where the sense of repetitiousness, I know the real word is repetition, but sometimes you need to manipulate the language to communicate clearly. Right, so that's done already. Wow. So do you remember early in this broadcast when I was adding this dark shadow up here? It felt really scary, and then I was doing light into the dark, and it felt quite dramatic, and it made me nervous. Well, look, it's dried now. It's like, dang, nothing to worry about. That looks great. It doesn't look like too much at all. So I think I'm down to nearly my last. Oh no, hang on. Before I go on, I actually had to go to Google Earth to find. So what does this sign say? And I'm not sure exactly, but it has the name of the town, which is Wilson, North Carolina. Wilson. Okay, tell you what, since I am doing lettering words twice in my painting, then this bears a little bit of, I'm going to switch these brushes out for two slightly smaller brushes. One of the downsides of painting with two hands is you have twice as many brushes to clean up all the time, because I've always got two brushes. All right, let's talk about, again, for you artists, let's talk about painting words or letters in painting. And forgive me, I'm going to start by going to the awful mistake that I see made so many times by early journey painters. I'm going to be a bit nasty and play act. Beginner painter, early journey student painter. Painting. Suddenly they come to a sign with words on it. And painting's a difficult and challenging activity. Your brain is having to work the whole time. So when they come to words, they go, oh, I know how to do this part. And they take off. That's unscrewing their head. They take off their painting brain and they pick up their penmanship brain. And they go, I've done this my whole life. Wilson, W-I-L-S-O-N. Get it? And then they wonder why that part of their painting doesn't really fit in with all the rest of the painting. Okay, so the solution is you don't take off your painting head and replace it with penmanship head. You keep your painting head on. And again, same thing with this sign here. I want it to be legible, but barely legible. In fact, it doesn't bother me if you guys who are not from North Carolina, it doesn't bother me if you can't read it at all. That's just fine with me. But I do want people who understand that that says Wilson to be able to look at it and go, oh yeah, that says Wilson. And again, little drop of joy juice is released in the brains, in the minds, in the heart and soul of people when their mind connects the dot. By the way, while I'm talking, I'm doing just a little bit of sparkle and reflection on that light. When their mind finishes the image and turns it into letters. Now, that has to dry for a few minutes. Let's go back over here to this sign. This is another place. I already had this done earlier, but I'm redoing it now with a, hang on. I'm redoing it now with a slightly lighter. I wanted a little bit more energy there, so I had to bring in some lighter color. And now I want to mix up what was there earlier. It's very dark brown, almost black brown. And one of the tricks, by the way, for painting lettering as opposed to penmanship is to paint in the negative. Casita Brewing Company. I can't even read my own writing, which is perfect. I want it to be slightly messy so that I can barely make it out. C. Oh, so do you see what I mean by negative painting? P. C-O-M-P. A. Whoops, I don't have room for the N. That's right, we're just going to squeeze it in there. Casita Brewing Company. So one of the tricks for avoiding B-R-E-W-I-N, one of the tricks is to paint in the negative, which is what I just did. One of the other tricks is to go back and forth, back and forth. So I did light color a few minutes ago, then just now I did dark. I'm going to go back and do light again. So that's what I'm going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now let's go back over to this one. Somebody who's watching this, absolutely, you didn't know this, and you absolutely, this was worth the price of admission right here, this tip. Cannot believe. Now, look at how I'm holding my brush. I'm just asking for trouble there, aren't I? All right, now you can definitely, well, I can definitely read that, it says Wilson, and it's a little bit too neat, so I'm not finished with that sign. I'm going to negative paint it one more time. I'm going to try it while it's still wet. In fact, sort of intentionally mess it up just a little bit. So I'm looking for a perfect balance between realism or tightness and looseness. Does that make sense? And it's very intuitive to know. That might be okay. Let's go back over here. I guess I'll start at the end. C-O-M-P-A-N. Another tip is, of course, paint with your left hand. Another tip is don't hold your brush in the penmanship grip. My left hand, of course, isn't nearly as coordinated as my right hand, So it doesn't do quite what I tell it to do, so it often makes actually more interesting marks. Now, whoops, I'm sorry, I thought I was on camera. There we go. Sorry about that. I like the intensity, I like the value that I have here now, but the white mark, the lighter marks that I just made are way too fat, and the word is not quite legible. So I need to do at least one more layer of dark up there. Let's go back up here. Yeah, and since I'm going to do dark on my brush, I'm going to do a little bit more here. That's pretty close. It's really, except it's off center slightly. Darn it, I'm probably just going to leave it that way. Yep, I think so. Don't tell anybody. While I've got this dark stuff on my brush, so I'm going to increase a little bit of energy way up here at the top. Whoop, sorry. Hey, while I need to come back and do this sign a little bit, but let me stand back and see. Okay, I know what else I can do. I'll do that sign later. I just saw where I can definitely increase the energy down here, and that is by adding more intense highlights to the people and the clothing down here. Oh, and on the way to that, someone the other night suggested that I make the these lights. The only really the only pleasing part of this the scene was this string of lights along the fence. That was pretty much all that they had done to make this what they called a beer garden slightly attractive. Other than that, there was really nothing attractive. I hope they don't watch this video. There was nothing attractive at all. You know, a cornhole game and bad grass and a couple of picnic tables and so forth. But anyway, that was. They weren't looking at it like an artist. They were looking at like somebody who wants to get a drink and play cornhole. So to them, it was beautiful. Anyway, somebody suggested I make more of those lights, which I've just done, and make them more irregular, which I think was a good idea. So. All right, that's a little better. All right, now what I said I was going to do, which is some highlights on these people. So I'm going to start at a real bright color and do some intense yellow on that guy right there. Intense yellow on the corner of this table. Then I'm going to smear it a little bit. Yep. Am I on camera? Yep, okay. Let's go from there to a very pale green, chartreuse, spring green, whatever you want to call it, a very light green, and hit some of these people. They are supposed to be sitting in the sun, right? So here's a tip, by the way. It doesn't apply to this particular painting because the people are too far away. But pretty much, if you're ever doing a painting of people and they're wearing clothes, I guess if you're doing a nude, that the same principle applies. But anyway, let me finish what I'm going to say. I'm thinking especially of clothing. And the people are outdoors in the sun. One thing you may not have noticed, and if the photograph you're working from is not very good, you may not ever notice this. So I'll go ahead and tell you that the little sliver edge of their clothing facing the sun, which in this case would be the right, will almost always entail have on it in it an absolutely pure white sliver edge, especially if it's up close. And many early journey painters fall way short of the intensity. So that's in a sense what I'm adding right now, but I'm not going to pure white because these people are too far away. Okay. Generally speaking, that does bring up a good point though. Generally speaking, early journey painters way under measure, under evaluate, don't put enough difference in their light and shadows. Outdoor scene. Let's stick with the outdoors. The same is true for indoors, but let's stick outdoors for a minute. In other words, a early journey painter won't make the sunshine in their painting bright enough and won't make the shadows in their painting dark enough, both. So they hover around the gloomy, gray, mid-tone twilight. This is a good example of good right here. And I did this during the festival. I've touched them up a little bit, but again, most early journey painters, so if that's you pay attention. They don't put, the lights aren't light enough in a sunlit scene. The lights aren't light enough and the darks aren't dark enough. Now, I actually have numbers to describe the difference. So I'm hoping that hoping that sometime in your life and in your journey you have seen a grayscale, which is typically black at one end, white at the other, and then 10 divisions, 10 degrees, going from almost white to almost black and everything in between, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? If you don't know what I'm talking about, then when you get off this broadcast, just Google grayscale, and you'll see a whole bunch of examples. Hit image, and you'll see a bunch of examples. All right. The reason I'm mentioning that is because I can actually give you a measurement. Generally speaking, the difference between a sunny side of an object and a shady side of an object is 5 steps on a grayscale. Again, most grayscales are 10 degree. So if the light side is number 3, then the dark side is number 8. And that's pretty much what you're seeing right here. In fact, according to that, this could be slightly more exaggerated. And I affirm that. Okay, this could be slightly more exaggerated. I have not overdone it here by any means. That, again, that goes along with early journey painters typically way underemphasize the lightness of the sun and way underestimate the darkness of the shade. And if you ever wonder what that should be, it should be 5 steps or 5 degrees on a grayscale, okay? One last thing I'm going to do on these people over here, and the ones in the sun, is I'm going to hit the light side of their face one more time. And this thing that's happening where my acrylics are drying darker is driving me crazy right now, because I put on several marks already that I thought were light enough, and then they dry and darken, driving me crazy. You already knew I was crazy, but I'm even more crazy than I was. All right, since I'm going to do this, I'll let you in a little. This is a little Dan Nelsonism. You don't need to paint like me. This is a weird idiosyncrasy of my painting. Hang on, I'm going to move you close. All right, a little while ago when I had these pencils in my hand, which is very unconventional, I drew a completely abstract mark right there. Has nothing to do, and there, they're everywhere. Has nothing whatsoever to do with realism. Oh yeah, that's a crack in the wall. No, it's just purely abstract. Why is it there? The answer is because it looks cool. I learned this when for 3.5 years, a year ago, our grandchildren were living with us, and they would enjoy watching me paint, and they would often say, Bigga, that was my name, Bigga. That is my name, Bigga. Why did you do that? Why'd you do that? And I discovered pretty much it's the same answer to every time they ask the question, Bigga, why did you do that? And the answer was, because I think it looks cool. Okay, so you may ask, why'd you put that line there? My answer is, because I think it looks cool. Okay, now, the weak side of that is that at the moment, that line is sitting right on top of all the paint here. So it has a rather artificial or contrived feeling about it. But I'm about to fix that. And this is crazy Dan Nelson painting. You do not need to paint like me, although I'm sure it's a good example of something. I'm just not sure what, besides good painting. I'm now mixed up a color very close to what was already there, maybe one tick lighter. Boy, that's probably going to dry and be one tick darker, so let me add more white to that. And I'm painting right up to, and sometimes on top of, that pencil line. So now, very strange thing happens. This is all like subtle psychological stuff. Visuals. I don't mean like I'm preaching a sermon. I just mean psychological stuff. Now, that pencil line is not on top of I just covered up a part of it right there. It's not on top of the paint. It's inside the painting. And for some reason, it now makes sense, or it doesn't bother the viewer. It doesn't look contrived. It doesn't look like, oh, he just dragged a pencil across the painting, that's what it did look like a minute ago. Okay, but now that I've painted right up to it on both sides, not perfectly carefully, just roughly up to it, it now feels like it works. Whatever works means, it feels like it works. All right, I'm going to move you guys back a little bit where you were. I'm liking these little accents that I'm putting on this brick wall here. Let me mix up a slightly darker color than what I've been doing and continue. Again, the question in my mind, the question inside my mind is, how much energy? That pertains to every region of the painting, every square inch. Is this the right? And of course, it's real simple. This painting is quite simple. Intense energy, and then diminishing outward. That's the most typical composition. Not all paintings are that simple. This one is pretty much just a bullseye target, pretty much. The closer we are to the bullseye, the more intense the energy. And this is real high energy. That's the highest energy in the whole painting is right there. This is a close second right here. And then color and activity over here. You know what? I can do one more. I thought I was almost done, but I just realized something. I'm going to go down here to the bottom of the painting, so I'm lifting my canvas up. And my sidewalk color down here is entirely too uniform, so that's almost the right color. That would be the right color, except it's going to dry darker, so it's going to be too dark. So hang on, let me add more white. All right, all I want to do is add energy to the sidewalk, and I'm doing that by adding, well, now I'm adding random lines. What I'm doing is adding a little bit of slightly lighter gray to what's already there. And then in the course of doing that, I actually changed the gray slightly to a slightly warmer gray, so that's fine, doesn't matter. Usually it's the same color, just slightly lighter. This time I changed the temperature ever so slightly, and that's okay. And I'm doing the same trick I did a little while ago. I drew a sloppy pencil line, and now I am painting up to that line on both sides. And again, this is crazy Dan Nelsonism. You do not need to, this is not like some the magic secret or anything. It's just, to me, you know, Bigka is my name in my grandchildren's world. Bigka, why'd you do that? You now know the answer, because I think it looks cool. Of course, not everything that an artist does ends up looking as cool as we had hoped, right? Sometimes the real answer is, why'd you do that? The real answer is because I thought it would look cool. And most of the time, I go, oh yeah, I thought, right, that was good. Every once in a while, it's like, it doesn't look as cool as I thought it would. That happens, right? It happens to everybody, by the way. Don't be discouraged. If you're a fairly beginner end of your journey, that happens to everybody. Just don't think you're the only one. That's very common. We don't like it, but it happens. The better at painting you get, the better you get at predicting what's going to look good. But even so, I don't think you ever bat 1,000%. If you are batting 1,000%, you're not experimenting enough in your painting, in my opinion. All right, I like that. I am going to call that done. The only thing for sure that I need to do, as I mentioned, is paint over this signature. So I think overall this painting is increased, yeah, from a C+ maybe to a A-. And again, given the subject matter, I don't know how to do it better than that. So I'm going to plead whatever that is, guilty. I'm going to plead ignorant. I don't know how to make it any better. And I'll leave it here for a couple days, so maybe something will dawn on me when I walk by. And that's very possible, of course. Before I go, let me go ahead and, this has to be somewhat opaque or it won't cover up that signature, right? All right, I think that'll work. Now that I've done that, I want to vignette this corner too a little bit. It's taking the noun, a vignette, which is the fading corners of a painting, and turning it into a verb. I don't know if that is a word or not. I am vignetting the painting, right? All right, thanks for your company. Let me see, if not many chats, that's all right. Bless you. Tiago. Oh, on the other painting, sorry, I left it way behind, didn't I? Yep, I like it cool and warm, I think. I might be wrong about that, but. All right, thanks for your company. I'm gonna rush off to my mural job this afternoon.